Peace and blessings, peace and blessings, peace and blessings, y'all. Peace and blessings. Happy Wednesday and welcome to the Ankh Living Podcast with yours truly, the one and only KiMu JTD. And this is where we are going to tap into the everyday words that we use and use them to reshape and reframe the life that we currently have so we can have a fulfilling and purposeful life of success at the end of our journey. So if that's something you want to continue to get into, tap into every single week, make sure you download, you subscribe, you comment every single episode. All right. So just for a recap, last week we reframed the word impossible, and I went over the background of how I reframed it and really dived into what I was able to reframe that word to be and have a meaning that is more conducive to the life that I want to live. And I reframed it into from impossible to I am possible. And then we also use that to tap and unlock our potential so that way we can create the life that we want every day, every moment, and move forward toward a life of purpose and success. Now, coming into this week's episode, I just want to enter in with a question. And that question is, what puts I had this question, and I had to ask myself, and I know other people have this question too, of what puts people into arenas of high influences. Like, we look at people who have made history books, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, we got Will Smith. We have, I know most people probably don't like him, but Kanye West. We have all the Beyonce, Rihanna. I can't forget people like that. We have all these influences in our lives, and we question, and we even look on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, whatever, and we see people getting on stages, and if they're not getting on stages, they're showing up as an ad on our feed, and we look at them, and because they're in positions of high influence. So what gets them there? And for me, answering this question, I had to do a little bit of research on my own, listening to people of high influences and kind of connecting the dots. Like, this is what I do. One thing I did not mention, I'm just kind of backtracking really quick. One thing I didn't mention about myself, and I recently came to this realization, is I'm a scientist at the end of the day, and I'm more so a word scientist, and uses that to understand natural laws and how us as people really create the life that we live, whether it's conducive to what we desire or inconducive to what we desire. But continuing forward, I had to personally, this is the story. I was on YouTube, and I've been on this sprint and stretch, creating more content, creating more value for my community and for my people and for my future people. And he said this word power. I don't even know what word he said. I know he mentioned the book 4-Day Laws of Power. And the guy's name is Myron Golden. I watch him every single day, whether it's a long form video or a short form video. I watch him every single day. And that's only because I resonate with him. Like, we do similar things. And I kept hearing this word power. And this was like for a couple days. Like people kept mentioning 48 laws of power, 48 laws of power, 48 laws of power. And it's not that I've never read the book. I've read the book, but I never really became a scientist of the word power. Like, what is this word power? And really diving deep into that, I, I sat back and I had to think, power. Power. Well, what is power? And I didn't go on the internet and look up definitions. But what I did was I looked up, I thought about every situation where we as people use the term power and taking it back to science. Me having an engineering degree, that was the first place I went because there's an equation for it. And as we already say, numbers don't lie. There's a formula for power. And this is where I came up with the answer to the question of how people get in these arenas of high influence. It's the power. Now, what is power? Power is the amount of energy that you can put out in a specific period of time. So people, to kind of really bring this in and really encapsulate it, people who have little power, they put out a lot of energy. They put out a short amount of energy over either a short amount of time or a long amount of time, or they put in a lot of energy over a lot of time. It's either way. Either you got a lot of energy a little bit of time, or you got a little bit of energy in a lot of time. It's either way. And the best way we can really compare this to is a sprint versus a marathon. When you're sprinting, you're putting in mad energy into, if we're talking about 100 meters, we're looking at the Olympics, we're looking at football summer camp. We're looking at people running between 4 and 5 seconds. That's a lot of power. That's a lot of energy being used over a short amount of time. And that's how people dictate, okay, you may be on my team. Like as a lineman, I need people who could get around the person they in front of quickly. What does that require? Power. And we have the opposite side of the coin, which is a marathon. And that's you're using a certain amount of energy over a longer period of time, which your power is going to end up decreasing because of the span of time, unless you figure out how to decrease that time. You use the same amount of energy that you use in that sprint, but the thing is, we're increasing the time. All right. And when I equate that and look at people of influence, now I'm starting to look at it and I'm like, oh, well, it's the same equation. They putting out the type of energy is no longer as physical, it's more mental. So they're putting out a lot of value at this point. That's what it is. They're putting their energy is in the shape of value. How many lives, like when we're looking at millionaires and billionaires, people who are successful in their own right, they are producing a lot of value in a short amount of time. They're impacting a lot of lives in a short amount of time. That's really all it comes down to. And we can really see this when we look at the structure of a company. The people at the bottom, they're not providing at the same amount of value. Like the amount of value is more physical. And then as we get to the top, it becomes more relational and more mental. So the more mental power and relational power that you can put out, there it is. You have more power. This is how we can see individuals moving millions of lives because they have enhanced their level of power. Now, of course, we're going to have to ask, well, KiMu, like, okay, I kind of understand what you're saying. I understand where you're going with this, but how can I use that in my life as an everyday person, as somebody who works at a job and I'm looking to create a fulfilling life? Well, I got 3 things for you, okay? Per usual, I'm always going to give you the how to. And these are always based on my personal experience, me observing my experience and the experiences of others. And essentially, what it comes down to for number 1 is don't be afraid of fulfilling the natural desire for power. Like, I feel like we look at people in power and we kind of see it as corrupt. And that's not so much so. Like, we as humans, I mean, in every aspect of existence has some level of desire for power, right? But it's not dominance. Like, that's what we can't get that associated with. We're not talking about dominance. Like, we're not talking about dominating people. We're talking about the amount of energy that we're using to influence other people's lives. And just think about it. And this is, once again, I'm speaking from personal experience. In my moments of depression, the multiple periods that I had depression in my life, in the moments I was suicidal, guess what? I felt powerless. I felt like my situation was working on me instead of me working on it. I'm not looking at myself as a person of value. I have decreased my value, and I'm just literally just existing in my head the whole time, not giving anything. But on the opposite side of that coin, if I was giving in some sort of way, more than I was just sitting in my head and realizing that I do have value, that I have experiences that I can provide value to people with, I have power. Now, I may not have the same amount of power of people like Michael Jordan or Kendrick Lamar, J. Cole, Drake, Jay-Z, any of these public figures, Barack Obama. I may not, Oprah Winfrey, I may not have that level of power, but I still have power. So that's number 1. That's tip number 1 of how we can live a fulfilling life through this law of power. It's a universal law. Like, you can't escape it. You look at any system in life, the law of power is going to exist there. The equation, the numbers ain't going to lie to you. When we go to the next tip that I have, it's use the marathon for the sprint. What? KiMu, what is you talking about, bro? What are you talking about? All right, I'm going to break it down to you because I'm sure it sounds confusing, but just stick with me. All right, so what I mean by use the marathon for the sprint, using the analogy I used earlier, what I'm saying is get more intentional skills to create more power. If I had to sum this statement up in one word or in one phrase, in one short phrase, it's always be a student. You know, I have this quote that I live by at this point, and the quote reads that success is the continued expansion of happiness and the progressive realization of worthy goals. And that's by Deepak Chopra. I've read plenty of success quotes, one by Earl Nightingale, and they both line up. All right, they both line up. Always be a student. You want to create a life of success defined by your own standard, because that's what's going to create a fulfilling life. You have to continue to be a student. Use those tools that you pick up along your journey, because every moment, every experience can be used as a tool that you put in your belt, so you can continue to move forward and and provide more value as you continue in your journey. Always be a student. All right. What does this look like for me? For me, I'm continuously learning how to be a better communicator, a better speaker, learning different words, and understanding and overstanding the actual context behind these words too. That's why on this podcast, I use words that you may use every single day, and we may not know it, but that's because we're just like talking without any intention. So I'm taking these words and these natural laws and bringing it to you in a form that is palatable, so you can create the life that you choose. All right, and then we're going to get into the last tip. This last tip is going to be, and y'all probably going to be sitting here confused, but it's the complete opposite of the previous tip, which is run the sprint to run the marathon. Now, what do I mean by this one? What I mean by this one is, like I said, the complete opposite. Along your journey, and I'm going to talk about this in another episode, run these sprints. Get a lot of tools under your belt. Run quickly towards success, because success loves speed. I'm going to talk about another concept in a future video, but with my clients and my mentees, I talk about momentum. That's how you're going to get to your success. That's how you're going to be able to feel the joy of the journey, of the process, and recognize the progress that you make along your journey, is by running the sprints. It's going to be painful. Yes. It may be treacherous, but when you're realizing that this is making you better, that the pain from running these sprints is making you better, you'll understand why. Look, you're never going to know how much power you develop until you get to the next level. And the analogy that I'm going to use before we get out of here is, whenever you think of like bench pressing, for example, I recently used this analogy with my mentee. If you keep benching 150, you're never going to know if you're getting any stronger until you bench something greater, like 155 or 160. You'll never know how much better you're getting if you continue to do the same thing. Spiritually, we want to elevate. Once again, power is required for elevation. I'm going to say that one more time. Power is required for elevation. Hey, once again, please go ahead and share this with your folks, with people that you love. Make sure you also comment below and tell me what type of value this created for you and what you will want to hear more of. And just know that I love you. I love you. If you didn't know, now you know. Hey, you have just tuned in to the Ankh Living Podcast with yours truly, KiMu JTD. Hey, I look forward to talking with y'all next Wednesday. Peace.